They said the canyon was already a grave. SEALs and operators pressed into the Kamar Basin, cut off, outnumbered, running out of ammo. Radio voices were shredded. 3 down on Echo, ammo black, enemy 50 meters. Above them, F-16s circled powerless. Helicopters stalled, unable to descend through the missile-choked air. Command back at FOB Meridian had already begun drafting the loss report. Every second felt like the last breath of men who knew rescue wasn't coming. And yet, one pilot refused to let their names turn into numbers. Her name was Captain Isa Mercer, call sign Hog 07. Small compared to the beast she flew, an A-10 Warthog whose cannon could tear the earth in half. She'd been dismissed as reckless, too hungry for action, too stubborn to obey procedure. But Isa knew those valleys better than anyone. She'd studied every fold, every shadow, until she could draw the ridges blindfolded. When others saw a kill box, she saw a thread of survival. Inside the ops room, Major Elias Brandt repeated the policy. Unauthorized, too risky, we can't put an A-10 in that coffin. Around him, screens glowed with red icons swallowing blue. Maps looked like fever dreams, SEAL teams fading out one by one. Doctrine demanded silence. Paperwork demanded caution. But Isa heard something else. American voices cracking with fear, begging for more time. The rule book trembled in one hand. Her flight gloves tightened in the other. And in that moment, Isa Mercer made a choice that could end her career or save 214 lives. She wrote a single line on scrap paper, tucked it in her helmet, and whispered, "If you're reading this, I acted because men were dying while paper argued." Engines roared alive. The Warthog's turbines screamed against the sky. On the tower net, Brandt's voice spat, "Unauthorized! Return to base immediately!" But Hog 07 was already rolling down the strip. Metal wind was catching the sun. The A-10 lifted into a clear blue sky, toward a canyon designed to kill it. The trapped SEALs didn't know her name, but they were about to. If you're caught up in this story, make sure you hit subscribe. More missions like this drop every night. Down in the basin, the fight was collapsing. 214 operators, SEALs, Ghost, and Kestrel detachments had less than 30 minutes of ammo left across the entire force. Machine guns chewed into their cover, and medics were running out of hands. Voices on the radio cracked with exhaustion. "We can't hold another push." Major Brandt at FOB Meridian clung to doctrine. "Unauthorized. She'll kill them all if she misses by a meter." But Isa Mercer knew something he didn't. She had rehearsed this canyon in the locked simulator 47 times, threading a GAU-8 burst within feet of friendlies, carving a corridor where none existed. The valley ahead was a coffin. 2 vehicle-mounted SAMs crouched on ridges, 3 man-pad crews lurking in scrub. No jet should have entered. No pilot should have dared. But Isa's voice cut through the net, flat and steady. "Hammer actual, Hog 07, mark your strobes. I'll work the edge." For a heartbeat, silence. Then a ragged voice, quiet as prayer. "Hog 07, confirm danger, close authority." That one line erased 1,000 pages of risk sheets. Isa answered without pause. "You're authorized. Designate." Her A-10 nosed into the canyon. Dust swirled. Sunlight flashed off ridgelines that bristled with rifles. She rolled low, her boots buzzing with the hum of the Avenger cannon. The first gun pit revealed itself, a crew hunched beneath a rock lip. Isa tapped the trigger. Tungsten tore the earth apart, silencing the threat. She rolled again. An assault squad sprinted down the slope, 70 meters from SEAL positions. Her finger hovered, discipline tightening every muscle. 1/2-second burst. Rounds stitched a ribbon of dust between blue strobes and hostile fire. The squad vanished. The operators on the ground breathed for the first time in hours. At Meridian, faces drained pale in the blue glow of monitors. They watched one woman thread death through needles the size of heartbeats. She's either suicidal Or surgical, someone muttered. She was surgical. Run after run, Mercer didn't waste fire. She placed rounds like stitches, sewing open a corridor. A Maverick peeled off her wing, obliterating a SAM vehicle in a cloud of dirt and metal. Another run dragged enemy fire away from pinned medics. She never lingered, never showed them the full target. Every burst was a fraction of a second, enough to kill, not enough to risk the men beneath her. Then came the moment every pilot dreads, a faint tone in her headset, a ghost signal, not a scream yet, just a whisper that a missile crew had locked eyes on her Warthog. She banked hard, hugging a ridge, buying seconds with instinct. The operators below didn't even know the danger. They only saw the sky erupt in fire and the Warthog return on another pass. Each time she pulled the trigger, the corridor widened. Each second she stayed alive, the impossible grew closer to real. Back at Meridian, Brandt gripped the table so tightly his knuckles bled. He had ordered her down. She had ignored him. And yet, for the first time, blue icons on the map began to move. Men who had been frozen in a kill box were running, bounding forward. The impossible was happening. Operators had been written off as casualties. Now, because of one pilot, they had a chance. The canyon wasn't silent anymore. It was alive with a rhythm Isa Mercer controlled. Her Warthog dipped and climbed, each burst of the Avenger cannon timed like a heartbeat. Where there had been chaos, she carved geometry. Every stitch of fire turned death into distance. On the ground, operators felt the shift. For hours they'd been pinned, counting magazines down to single digits. Now, with each thunderclap from above, a new seam opened. Move! Set! Next bound! Voices carried urgency, but also something new. Hope. At FOB Meridian, the room that had written them off as lost stared at screens in disbelief. Blue icons, those fragile dots that marked living men, were finally shifting. For the first time, the operators were not retreating. They were advancing. Then Mercer's headset sang again. A staccato tone, sharper this time. A real lock. The kind that doesn't bluff. Instinct slammed her stick over, the Warthog dropping so low it scraped the canyon's shadow. A contrail lanced the sky behind her, missing by a hair's breadth. For a heartbeat, Isa's pulse raced, but she didn't flinch. She rolled back on target, steady as stone. Hammer. Actual's voice crackled through the net. Hog 07, you just saved us. Keep it coming. She didn't answer with words. She answered with fire. A Maverick peeled from her wing, punching through another SAM emplacement. The blast shook the canyon walls, collapsing a ridge that had been funneling enemy fire. Dust boiled up, giving the operators precious seconds to push through. One by one, the valley's threats folded. Gun teams shredded. RPGs silenced mid-launch. Pickup trucks erupting in clouds of dust before their gunners could even line up. Isa wasn't hunting spectacle. She was hunting precision. Every pass gave the operators another 20 meters, another breath. Then came the fold on the west ridge. On paper, it had been dismissed as terrain, Ishin noise, just a wrinkle in satellite imagery. But Isa had circled it weeks before, memorizing it until it lived in her bones. She guided Hammer Actual toward it, calm and low. That fold is real. Move through it. I'll rake 50 meters ahead. Her cannon thumped like a zipper across stone. Dust erupted. The eastern guns that had chewed the SEAL teams fell silent. Blue icons began to flow into the fold, men bounding, sprinting, dragging wounded, all shielded by her fire. At Meridian, Major Brandt's rigid posture cracked. He watched chaos reshape into order, watched the impossible bend under one pilot's discipline. He had called her unauthorized. Now he saw her for what she was, the only reason 214 operators still drew breath. But war never leaves clean threads. As the operators surged toward the fold, a PKM team shifted low, trying to rake the corridor. Isa dipped, almost skimming the canyon floor, and fired 3 quick bursts. Dust swallowed the threat. A heartbeat later, a third Chinook crested the ridge, weighed heavy with men and gear. Isa shepherded it with her cannon, beating back fire until its rotors clawed clear sky. The basin that had been a coffin now opened into a road. For the first time since the ambush began, escape wasn't just a dream. It was real. But the canyon wasn't done. Isa's display flickered. A ghost ping on the north crest. A team she hadn't seen before crawling into position, desperate enough to block the only exit. Hammer Actual's voice cut sharp. Urgent threat! Ridgeline north! Isa banked hard, metal groaning, pulling the warthog into a dive so tight it shaved stone. Her crosshairs locked on muzzle flashes and scrub. She fired. Tungsten tore through rock and men alike. For a heartbeat, the valley froze. And then, another tone. This one different. Not a fading ghost, not a bluff. A cold, continuous scream in her headset. A missile lock. The corridor was open. The operators were running. But the valley had found its last word. The missile tone was merciless. A continuous scream inside Isa Mercer's headset. The kind that meant death had already left its launcher. The warthog was too low, too heavy, too slow to escape like a fighter jet. Any pilot would have climbed, dumped flares, prayed. Isa didn't climb. She dove. The missile carved through sky, hunting heat. At the last instant, Isa dragged her A-10 behind a stone ridge so tight, the earth itself swallowed the seeker. Silence returned, sudden and absolute. Her pulse thundered, but her voice on the net stayed calm. Hogs 07. Still here. Keep moving. On the ground, 214 operators surged like water through the folds she had carved. Wounded carried, magazines nearly dry, but still alive. They ran beneath a canopy of cannon fire. Every burst, another shield Isa stitched above them. One by one, Chinooks dropped into the corridor. Rotor wash churned dust into storms as operators clambered aboard. Chalk 1 lifted out, then Chalk 2. A third bird staggered heavy with men and gear, Isa guarding it with every ounce of fire she had left. Back at Meridian, the room once frozen with dread erupted in motion. Tankers spun up, medevac teams staged, QRFs scrambled. Even Major Brandt, who had written her off as reckless, now barked orders to support her corridor. Paperwork could wait. Lives were moving. The last SEAL element bounded through scrub, sprinting into the shadow Isa had cleared with her cannon. She caught one final PKM team on a ridge. 3 short bursts silenced them before their rounds could rake the exit. Then, at last, the canyon began to empty. Operators. All accounted for. Not one left behind. The valley that had been a coffin closed behind them like a scar. Dust settled, silence pressed down, and the only sound left was the heavy breathing of men who had escaped death. Isa circled once, eyes scanning the basin, confirming it was done. Only then did she climb, trailing smoke but steady, her warthog carrying her home. At FOB, Meridian came the reckoning. Inquiries, demands, accusations of recklessness. Mercer offered no theatrics. She laid down maps, gun camera tapes, calculations written in her own hand. Where others saw defiance, she showed preparation. Where they saw insubordination, she revealed discipline. On paper, the verdict was a reprimand. In reality, it was a mandate. Her methods bled into training. Close air support rewritten with her fingerprints. Pilots once dismissive now filled lecture halls, scribbling notes as she spoke. Commanders who had doubted her began assigning her the hardest problems, knowing she would find solutions. Months later, those same operators, men who had once been names on a condolence draft, sat in the front row of her briefings. Alive. Listening. Remembering. They carried their lives forward because of what she had done, and they made sure the next generation knew why. Isa Mercer never called herself a hero. In her quarters sat a small box with tokens, a coin, a patch, a scrap of paper with 4 words. You showed up. She rarely opened it. She didn't need to. Every time her hand brushed the cold titanium of her A-10, She remembered the night doctrine failed, and courage redrew the map. The lesson wasn't about breaking rules. It was about the rule beneath all others. When lives hang in the balance, skill and courage can turn a tomb into a road home. And because of that, 214 Americans went home alive. So if you're still here, remember this. Heroes aren't born in calm halls or written in clean reports. They're carved in dust, in seconds, in choices no one else is willing to make. And you'll find more of their stories right here. Subscribe, and don't miss tomorrow's mission.